Hello, Reject Nation. I'm Greg Alba.
I'm John Humphrey.
Continuing our reviews from the spot you always see us at. Yay, mixing it up in no way possible. Anyway, we're going to talk about the most ultimate of Valentine's Day movies, Alita Battle Angel. Because, sure, there's romance in it.
More like Alita Romance Angel.
No.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sex.
Listen, before we hop into this review, I wanted to say a special thank you to everyone who has been downloading and following us on the Stardust app. That stuff is so free that it doesn't cost any money to do it. Isn't that ridiculous? It's 30-second reactions, reviews for films, TV shows, and trailers. Post daily. You can also post on there as well and even tag us and maybe we'll look at it. So download the app, do it today. Let's talk about Alita Battle Angel. So if you haven't seen any of the highly praised trailers for Alita Battle Angel, here's the description on IMDb. A deactivated female cyborg is revived. If it wasn't a female, would it say male? But cannot remember anything of her past life and goes on a quest. I'm just so feminist to find out who she is. So this is a long work in progress. It's based on a famous manga. James Cameron wrote and produced this movie. Robert Rodriguez directed it. Supposedly this weekend it's going to bomb so bad.
That's what everyone says.
So this review should skyrocket through the roof right now. My initial reaction throughout most of this movie, but especially when we were conversing with people after it was done.
Yeah.
And real quick, I just want to say thank you to 4DX for hooking up a screening. I do feel, and there were plenty of people who, like, you know, you always talk to the 4DX people, then you talk to the people after when the 4DX people aren't around, and everyone was unanimously agreeing. Everyone was in agreement. The 4DX does elevate the experience quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to get your best experience possible, I would say 4DX. It's with like the motion chairs, the strobe lights. I'm sure we're showing images over us talking right now to compensate for the lack of being able to articulate the experience. So go watch it there.
Yeah, if you get a chance, man. This is the kind of movie 4DX is made for.
I did feel it's elevated, but even if I hadn't seen it on 4DX, I would still probably have the same opinion, which is I agree with everyone. Yeah. That's just the way I am describing my opinion about this movie. Is I heard two reviews. Normally I don't listen to reviews of the movies before I go watch them, and I was like, it's just Alita Battle Angel. I watched Screen Junkies News, which had Dan and Roth, who like really did not like this movie a lot. Like they really didn't. And then I heard Chris Stuckman's review, who was a lot more on the positive side and had his reasonings for why he might have been a little bit more biased than other critics because he's familiar with the manga. He's a big anime fan in general, yada, yada, yada.
I've heard a couple people who are familiar with that specific one and just anime in general say that is a particular point this movie satisfies.
Yeah.
Aggressive Comics noted that too.
And if you watch our trailer reactions, I've always had big hopes for this movie. When it first came out on Rotten Tomatoes, it was like a 30%. Now it's at like 60-something%.
It's been hovering at 60 all week.
So my expectations for this film went in just appropriate enough. It was like, okay, it sounds like it's going to give me 100% what I want, which is just a fun time. Mm. Nothing more.
There'll be some things that are good about it.
Yeah.
And maybe some things that don't work.
So I agree with everyone. Every flaw I've heard about this film, trying to set up too much, over convoluted, it's all there. It's like so there, especially in the finale where like the last 20 to 30 minutes are just so ridiculously rushed.
They're pretty jam-packed.
Wrap up this story. A lot of illogical plot hole things where you're like, we didn't need to do that. And a lot of setting up for sequels where you're like, oh, okay, so a lot of this that we saw wasn't even necessary. It's just a setup for a sequel. But there's also plenty of good things in this movie that I really did enjoy. I really liked Rosa Salazar in this film. So charming. And somewhat, it's not a stiff character like how the trailers might lead you to believe of a girl who might smile and wonder but is overall kind of a stiff performer. She has a lot of personality in the movie. Christoph Waltz, who is probably the greatest supporting actor to have ever existed.
He shows up for these little parts, man, but he gives them his all.
Yeah, bad villainous or good guy, he's just such a good supporting actor in everything he does.
And
his
he's
two
one of my
Oscars are
favorite.
for. Sorry, you.
Oh no,
I'm talking a lot, haven't I?
Two Oscars for being a supporting actor. Yeah, no, but he's great. Like he really does show up no matter what the role is, and he was one of my favorite parts of this actually.
Even Ed Skrein I thought was a really standout character in the movie. I thought the world was so cool. You know, like there are people who can be so dazzled by like the world of Avatar or Aquaman, and that alone is enough to make them recommend the movie or love it for its designs, like love it for those elements. And I found myself, maybe because I'm naturally a sucker for sci-fi films, looking at the designs, the aesthetics, the world of this, it didn't wear off on me. No. You know, like usually it's like, all right, I got used to it after 20 minutes and it's whatever now. And it's like, it's always impressive, but it's whatever. Throughout this movie, I would constantly find myself going, man, that looks so cool.
Yeah.
Like, that is just so cool what they did.
Well, and I think part of what enhances that aspect is one thing I think this movie does get right is fleshing out its world in a way that doesn't seem as gimmicky as it could, because, you know, you see all these spectacular places and structures, but you also get to meet who inhabits them and see what different jobs there are through some of the main characters and stuff like that. And so, yeah, like the cyberpunk world that they create, you know, so many movies have aped this kind of thing out of anime before, but it really is like a dazzling world, and it's realized, I thought, in a satisfying mix of CG and practical sets and things like that.
Well, yeah, because a lot of them are cyborgs with human elements, and there are others where it's a little bit muddied in terms of, are they human who got a lot of cyborg upgrades? You know, some of it's a little confusing in that department. You can definitely feel some of the re-editing on this movie because there's a lot of famous actors who show up. There are some where they're intentionally famous to be teased for a sequel, and there are some where you're like, I've seen you in so many movies. Like there's that whole bar scene that you see in the trailer when Ed Skrein touches her, and she does that thing where she goes up to his neck and throws him down.
Paints
the blood on her. That whole bar scene. They cut around to a lot of different hunter characters, as they call them, and you're like, man, these guys probably all have roles that are just not in this movie, you know?
Yeah. This was probably a much longer scene before, and there are a lot of moments like that where you could tell, like, I bet that guy was supposed to continue talking, or I bet this scene was a lot longer at first.
Yeah,
it feels a little random now that it's just kind of this sliver.
Any flaw that I've been told about this, and it just showed from every review I've heard, it showed after the screening was done and listening to everyone's opinions. Not one part of me wanted to go, you're wrong, or I disagree. It's just, which side of the scale will your feelings ultimately land? Does the things you like about the movie, will that ultimately outweigh the things you don't like about the movie? And for me personally, the things I liked, I really took away a lot from it. You know, my girlfriend said it felt like a CW show, and I'm like, well, I happen to like the CW shows.
I'm a Riverdale fan.
I'm like, yeah, I feel you on that. And it's like there's so many elements that are corny. The one thing that I really, because a lot of this is just me going, whatever, that's stupid, no, like brushing it off. The one element that I really just did not care for was the element with the love interest, Hugo, which sucks because the guy is really giving it his all, and he does a fine job. He's not bad in the movie. Was it Keanu Johnson's his name? Yeah, he's fine in the movie.
He shows up looking exactly like Robert Rodriguez at first, too, with like the bandana and the leather jacket.
Guy from the Forbidden Kingdom, or that's what I thought.
Michael Angarano? I mean, he looks kind of like Michael Angarano.
The thing is, the movie gives a lot of focus to it, and the movie really wants you to care, and I just don't care.
I mean, the thing is, he's got some charm, and I found myself enjoying some of their scenes together despite how cheesy, like, some of that stuff is the cheesiest of the movie, but at the same time, it's like, it doesn't get deep enough to really merit being this focal thing, but it is kind of fun and charming, I guess, you know? It feels very familiar, and it's nothing more than a bunch of other romances of this variety you've seen 1,000 times. And that's kind of its major sin, you know, boilerplate.
There were times where I felt like this movie was kind of pushing some of its feminist angles, which was fine by me. But the thing that was conflicting specifically with the romantic element was because she just like becomes such a little girl about him so early on and obsessed and in love, and I'm like, why?
Yeah. What is it about this boy?
I feel like a man wrote this, you know?
Yeah.
That's what was like distracting to me about it. Yeah. And there's a lot of performers in here who are fine, they're just not utilized well. Literally every flaw you've heard, I'm here just to tell you everything you've heard is true. Is there a lot of things that are lackluster in terms of like, yeah, Mahershala Ali's fine, but yeah, a lot of people could have done that role. Jennifer Connelly, fine, a lot of people could have done that role. That's the way it is for a lot of people. But the thing is, I think there's plenty of great things in this movie that warrant a viewing experience, and it's just up to you. If you like literally don't expect a deep film and you just want to have fun, because there's action scenes in here that are just incredible. There are like incredible action moments in here, and the visuals are so like, this movie sets out to give you a cool visual world. It's not as deep as it wants to be. It is muddied, but I wouldn't mind watching a sequel. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, well, and in the day and age where like the barriers are so thin and you can count on the idea that they will hear and take some constructive criticism, yeah, I walked out of this feeling like, this is kind of a mess, but it's a mess that's got enough stuff that I enjoyed or saw the potential and that I would love to return, yeah, to the world, to the story. Because the action's really dazzling too. That's probably the most consistently quality thing about this movie, is that there's not really one action scene I can think of where I was like, He's got a very punchy direction style, and it comes out, I noticed during the action especially, because he directs that stuff with energy, but in a way where you can always tell what's happening. And I so appreciate it. Like, it really shows how good he is at working with CG and green screens and effects, but also marrying them to worlds and stuff that, you know? And so I feel like that saves a lot of this, because on the story and the technical side, there's like just as much good as bad in almost every other department, you know?
I mean, I'll tell you this, I've seen quite a few movies lately that are over convoluted. Fantastic Beasts 2, where you're like over convoluted and it's boring as shit. And then you get Aquaman, where people are kind of split on how, like, I recommend that movie.
Yeah, I like that.
But I'm also there going, I didn't really feel much when I watched it. I feel like technically Aquaman's a better movie, but I felt a little more when I watched this movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, this movie gets my recommendation.
I walked out with a greater sense of joy, because I think there's something satisfying about the fact that this is a scrappy movie, but at its core, there's something good and there's something worthwhile.
Fun.
And yeah, you know, it's also something that's a little bit new, and it's of a style that is trying to find its footing, and I feel like for anime adaptations, in some ways, this is the closest we've gotten to a quality one.
Oh, totally.
And so I feel like that edge also kind of puts me in the same position as you, where I've seen a lot of this kind of thing lately, and this is sticking with me. I like it. It's scrappy, but I liked it.
And before we wrap this video up, I want to give a Patron of the Day shout out to a lovely woman named Adelia Chamberlain. Adelia, my dear, we've been talking quite a bit, and you saying how you're kind of looking forward to this movie. You don't know how to feel about it. We've had some conversations about this film, and I'm hoping that you get a chance to go watch this movie. You're one of my favorite people in the world. I really look forward to every message that we can have with each other over at Patreon. You are such a sweetheart, and you know what? In a lot of ways, you are the battle angel for our channel, man.
Adelia Battle Angel. It's perfect.
See, you finished it, John.
Yeah,
that's what I did. I alley-ooped it.
Dude, and I just dunked it right in for you.
That's what you did. We dunk you.
We dunk you. That's going to be a new t-shirt.
You're the first girl to get dunked on her. The first person to get dunked. Yeah. Anyway, guys, you can subscribe to the Reject Nation. Click that notification bell. Download and follow us on the Stardust app.
And join us on Patreon and maybe get dunked.